Okay, good morning everyone. Bruchim Babaim. Welcome to today's class at the Daniel S. Loeb Torah Center. It's dedicated loving memory to Nishmat Tzvi David Ben Leah and Shlomo Elias Elem Shalom, sponsored by son Ben Zion Elias. Refor Shlem Hana Bat Tzima Fega and Eyal Shimon Ben Mazal Fortuné, and Torah Diamond Center donor Stanley and Frida Carey. In loving memory and Little Nishmat Stanley Carey, Shmuel Ben Gerez. Okay, friends, so much to discuss. I have a million things to tell you and not much time to do it. I want to start, though, with something I promised myself. I was in Eretz Yisrael over Sukkot, and I made a promise to myself that I would try to make a PSA, a public service announcement, as often as possible this entire year. You know that 2023, Rosh Hashanah, Erev Rosh Hashanah, I spoke in many places. That's a busy season for rabbis. And I mentioned that we have a tradition that the year that Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbat, that upcoming year could either be an amazing year or, la'aleinu, a very challenging year. Why would this be? Because, my friends, when Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbat, you only have one day of shofar, because we do not sound the shofar on Shabbat. Now this is a challenge, and I'll tell you why. Because if you only have one day of shofar, even in Israel, it's a 2-day Yom Tov Rosh Hashanah, it's not enough to protect us. The shofar acts as a protection, a haganah for the Jewish people. And since we're lacking one day of shofar, we have a problem that we don't have 2 days of shofar to protect us. So I said then, Erev Rosh Hashanah 2023, that since we don't have 2 days shofar, we have Shabbat instead. But if we don't keep Shabbat properly, we are losing half of our protection, because Shabbat also acts as a haganah, a protection for the Jewish people. And I said this, and it's on video, I said it a few places actually. Unfortunately, the words I said came to fruition, and that year, as we know, that Sukkot, we know what happened, all the chatufim, all the hostages were taken, and there were thousands of people that were killed. Okay, Baruch Hashem, they came back this Sukkot, but we are still reeling from that event. I'm mentioning it again now because next Rosh Hashanah, 2026, also falls on a Shabbat. And so I've made it my mission to try to instill upon the Jewish people, as much as possible this entire year, number one, to take on Limud Shabbat, to learn Hilchot Shabbat, which I plan on doing here, B'ezrat Hashem, a lot more, God willing, this upcoming year, at Safra Synagogue and elsewhere that I teach, and to try as much as possible to raise Shabbat as a conscious, so that in and of itself is a great thing, but at least by the time we get to Rosh Hashanah that falls on Shabbat, at least, although we have 1 day of shofar, at least we will have Shabbat itself that acts as a protection for us as well. Okay, that's the public service announcement, trying to get people to be more Shabbat halacha conscious this entire year in preparation for Rosh Hashanah 2026. Okay, let's get to our parasha, because there's so much juice inside the parasha, which is so relevant to us today. It's incredible, as I want to show you. So the shift from last week's parasha of Noach to this week's parasha of Lech Lecha is not just 10 generations. We know between Noach and Avraham were 10 generations. It's way more than that. It's a shift from the world to the Jewish people specifically. We go from Noach, and Noach is going to represent the entire world. That's why we have 7 mitzvot of Noach, Shiva mitzvah b'nei Noach, that applies to all the Jewish people. And now the Torah narrows in to one person, Avraham Avinu. You know, I always tell people the Torah is not a history book of events. It's not a history book at all, actually, but it's definitely not a history book of events. You know, Marx, I shouldn't say Yamach Shemo, but I want to, and Marxian history takes all the events of history and says they're a history of events. Okay? Since we may have a Marxist mayor soon, it's worth knowing how they see the world. We, the Jewish people, see the Torah as a history, and all of history actually, as a history of people, not events. The events are almost immaterial because it all depends upon the people who are acting out the events. And so, whether those people are good people and therefore good events occur, or bad people and bad events occur, it's all about people. That's why creation of the world takes not more than 20 Pesukim in the Torah. But the history of people, very quickly, it's Adam and Chava and Cain and Hevel and Noach. And now we get to the Margalit, we get to the pearl of people, and that is Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu is what the Torah is all focused towards, and he really appears in our parsha. So we're now going to be dealing with specifically what the Jewish people, i.e. the descendants of Avraham, Isaac and Yaakov, are going to be dealing with. And the first opening statement includes two words to describe what Avraham Avinu is going through. And these two words, by the way, second to Naaseh v'Nishma, which we will discuss when we get to Parshat Mishpatim, but second to those two words, these two words in our parsha are by far the most important and influential. Because you know that God revealed himself to Avram. He's not Avraham yet at this point. He hasn't been given the hay, and his wife Sarai has not been given her hay yet, but they will. And it's because of what's happening now. So it says, Vayom Hashem el Avraham lech lecha. Right, two of the most famous words in the Torah. Lech lecha, and the entire parsha is called lech lecha. But they're two very unusual words, because you don't need two words to describe what's going on. This, according to most commentators, is the first of the 10 tests of Avraham Avinu. There's different opinions as to what make up the 10 tests of Avraham. But most say that this is the first of 10 tests. Lech lecha. What is being told to Avram over here? He's being told to go. Where was he? Well, we know he was born in Ur Kasdim. We know that he left Ur Kasdim to finish his mission in Haran. Haran is outside of the land of Israel. And he lived there, and he was extremely successful in Haran. That's where he became so famous. He's influencing people. He's influencing children. And he has his tent that's open on all four sides. By the way, I just performed the chuppah last Sunday in Eretz Yisrael, in a beautiful place called Chavat Ronit. I recommend visiting it. Wow, what is Mamash Gan Eden. About 30 minutes outside Tel Aviv. And I was there, and I said under the chuppah that this chuppah is open on all four sides. Nachon? Mi'arba tzdadim. Why is the chuppah open on all four sides? If it represents the home that this chatan and kala are going to be living in, there are not many homes that are open on all four sides. Most homes have four walls, or you're being overcharged for not much. And the answer is because it represents the ohel, the tent of Avraham and Sarah, that was open on all four sides, so people could come in and visit. And that is how Avraham and Sarah influenced the world. They opened up their tent from all four sides so people could come in. And they were very, very successful at spreading ethical monotheism. That they were great at doing, Baruch Hashem. And people came from everywhere, and they influenced tens of thousands of people, right? And that's why the entire world, whether they're Christians or Muslims or even atheists, Avraham, Ibrahim, Abraham, everyone sees Avraham and Sarah as their spiritual ancestors. It's because of this, because they opened their tent to strangers. I'm sure some of the strangers were strangers as well. And yet, the door was always open to influence and impact. And they were very, very good at it. Very good. They made a good Suda, which we're going to see about next week. We're going to show them what's on the menu. And people came from far and wide in order to be influenced by them. And that's why they lived in a tent. They could afford a house. Avraham was extremely wealthy. He could afford a home, and there were houses in those days, but they knew that if they wanted to get around, they needed to live in an ohel that is mobile. And Hashem says to Avram and Sarah, it's time to go. What do you mean go? I'm doing fantastic over here. Everything's fantastic. I'm influencing so many people, God. They're leaving their pagan background. They're leaving their idolatry. Why would I go anywhere? This is where I need to be. This mamash is Gan Eden. Why would I go? And Hashem says, you don't appreciate this, but your mission is going to fulfill its pinnacle in another location. I need you to leave. How do you say go? Lech. The parsha doubles it. Lech lecha. All of the commentators, the Rishonim, Achronim, everyone focuses on this double expression, Lech lecha. Now the simple understanding is, Lech lecha means go for you, for your benefit. You think you're doing well over here right now. You think that your life is great here right now, but your life is going to be even better somewhere else. So Lech lecha means this is going to be for your benefit. And the commentators double down, and Rashi doubles down and says, not only that, but I promise you that you're going to have children in this next location, which you've been barren together with Sarah up to this point. And I promise you that you're not going to lose your wealth because it's expensive. And I promise you're going to be safe on this journey as well. So spiritually and financially, emotionally, and for the future of your descendants, it's all going to be better where you are. That is one understanding of Lech lecha. Lecha is, this is for your hana'ah, for your benefit. Say the deeper commentator something else. Lecha means to you. Go to you. What does it mean, go to you? Go find yourself. This journey is going to allow you to see parts of your personality, parts of who you are in essence, that you would never have seen elsewhere. It's all about this journey. And that's why, by the way, Avraham is not told where he's going. The destination is left anonymous. Now, we know where, because he ends up in Eretz Yisrael. But it's all about the journey, not about the destination. And there God promises to make him into a Goy Gadol, a great nation. That's the background. Then God gives him the following very unusual guarantee. And he says, not only are you going to have children over there, and you're going to build yourself up and do amazing work, but I'm promising you that you are going to be a bracha. Va'avaracha va'agla shemecha. I'm going to make your name very, very great. I'll give you a bracha that your name is going to be great. We're not told what this bracha is. What is the bracha that God gives Avraham that he is now going to become a bracha himself? What is the bracha of Avraham Avinu? The Gemara asks this question, and it gives a fascinating answer. It says that the first bracha of the Amidah is the bracha that Avraham was given right now. That the Jewish people, for thousands of years, are going to say the Amidah 3 times a day. And every time they say it, they're going to open up saying, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Velokei Yaakov. You are going to be a bracha for the Jewish people. Every time they mention this, they are receiving the brachot from you, and you are going to be the source of baracha for them. Let me ask you a question. What makes a bracha into a bracha? Like, logistically speaking, what makes a bracha into a bracha? So the Gemara tells us it needs 2 qualities, Shem and Malchut. Shem means God's name, Amonai, Yud with a Hey and a Vav and a K, Baruch atah Ado with a Nai. That is the first thing it needs in order to be a bracha. Very good. What's the second thing? Melech HaOlam, Malchut, Shem and Malchut. It needs Melech. Every single bracha we make, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam borei pri ha'etz, you eat an apple. Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam shehakol nivara, you drink your coffee. It's always got those 2 qualities. There's an exception. The one exception is the opening bracha of the Amidah, that we call a bracha. It is a bracha. There's no melech. There's Hashem's name, but there's no melech. So how can they be considered a bracha? And it is considered a bracha. How could the first bracha of the Amidah be considered a bracha when it's not got one of the 2 main qualities that's needed for a bracha to be a bracha? Elokeinu melech haolam. And the answer from the commentators is unbelievable. And if it wasn't written, I couldn't even say it. The melech in that bracha of the Amidah is Avraham Avinu. He is the Malchut. He became the king of his day. And therefore we mention Avraham Avinu. Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. Just mentioning his name fulfills the requirement of the Malchut in order to make this bracha into a bracha. So it is a bracha. Who is the Melech? Hashem says, it ain't me this time, it's all you. Now that itself is mind-bending to understand the level that Avraham Avinu reached at this time. But I'm going to double down. Because the Torah and the Amidah does not waste words. We say in the Amidah, Elokei Avraham, Velokei Yitzchak, Velokei Yaakov. Is there an easier, shorter, easy pass way that we could have strung that information together? We could say, Baruch Hashem, Elokei Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Why Elokei Avraham? Elokei Yitzchak, Velokei Yaakov. Why do we need the Elokei each and every time when they can be strung together simply with fewer words? The Torah and the Amidah does not waste words. From here we learn a very important principle which relates to what we're talking about. You see, Avraham was very, very great. He was the greatest of all the Avot. He had 10 tests and he passed all the 10 tests with flying colors. And he's considered the greatest of the Avot because he didn't have any teachers or mentors, says the Rambam, in the laws of Avodah Zarah. In the introduction to the laws of Avodah Zarah, which is well worth reading, we get a little biographical sketch of Avram's life. And we're told that he was an idol worshipper. We know this, it says in Haggadah, we are Aravot, were idol worshippers. They were languishing, and he was. His father Terach not only was an idol worshipper, he was in the idol business. He was mamash selling idols, I'm sure for retail prices. And Avraham Avinu didn't have any teachers or any mentors, says the Rambam. And yet, through his own understanding, he was able to discover God. And that's why he's considered the greatest of the Avot. Because Yitzchak had Avraham. Yaakov had Yitzchak and Avraham. But Avraham didn't have anyone. He was alone. He was stranded. He was in the middle of Alabama. He was in the middle of Afghanistan. He was actually in the middle of Iraq, Bavel, as it was. And he had no teachers or mentors, and yet he still was able to figure it out. That's why he's considered the greatest of the Avot. So it makes sense we should say Elokei Avraham. But why Elokei Yitzchak and Elokei Yaakov? They didn't need Elokei. They had Avraham Avinu. They had a great teacher, their father and grandfather. From here we learn something which is so crucial and something which we need to repeat to ourselves very, very often. Especially those of us who have children or grandchildren, those of us who are involved with other people as well, who may not follow the same exact brand of Judaism and Torah that we do as well. You see, Avraham had a connection to Hashem, but it was very unique. And it was specific to Avraham Avinu. And we can learn from that derech. What was his whole thing? Chesed. His relationship to Hashem, that I personally relate to, was through being nice to other people. Yitzchak's was not that way. His was Gevurah. His relationship to Hashem was completely different, actually diametrically different to his father Avraham Avinu. So although he learned Torah from his father Avraham, absolutely, no doubt about it, but he had to find his own way. He had to find his own God. And he did. It was through strength and inner contemplation, hitbodedut, working on himself, killing himself. Actually, Yitzchak literally had to allow himself to be killed in Avodat Hashem. That was not Avraham Avinu's way. Avraham was all about great food, great drinks, come to the tent, let's open all four sides, let's learn, let me talk to you about God, leave your Avodah Zarah outside, now we're in a new place. So Yitzchak had to discover his own way, and he did. And by the way, it's not so easy. Having a father who is a gadol, Shabbat Torah, not easy. I know many of us think, oh, if only my father was the head of the yeshiva, or the rabbi of the synagogue, or a big tzaddik, I could be amazing. Right? But Hashem didn't allow that to happen. Make no mistake, being the child of a gadol comes with tremendous pressure. Not only in the fact that everyone's looking at you like, oh, you're the rabbi's child, you shouldn't be talking Lashon Hara, leaving that aside. I mean, that as well, for sure. but also everyone expects you to follow the exact derech of your father. And if you don't, what's wrong with you? Well, you can't be religious like him. You've got to find your own path. The Amidah and the Avot and Imot are teaching us that you are expected to find your own derech in Torah. You've got to keep on the path. You can't go OTD. You can't go off the derech. But you've got to find your own derech. And Yitzchak did that. And that was difficult. And then Yaakov had the same problem, but he had double problem. Yaakov had a father who followed one derech of Gevurah, a grandfather who followed Chesed. What's Yaakov going to do? What's left for him? So he had to find a middle path. He had to find Tiferet. He had to blend the two together, which is what Yaakov actually ended up doing. He was the perfect synthesis of his father's Gevurah and his grandfather's Chesed. And that's why it says Elokei Avraham. But there's also Elokei Yitzchak. You can look at Yitzchak, maybe that's what I need to be doing. And it's okay if other people follow that path. And then Yaakov said, but wait a minute, what about me? You also have your own God, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Velokei Yaakov. You also follow your own path. And so now we have three very distinct paths that our Avot went through, and each was very valid. I didn't read anywhere that Avraham was like, come on, Yitzchak, open up your tent, let the guests in. Avraham was like, that's how I relate to Hashem. Now you have to relate to Hashem in another way. Some people are prayer people. And some people are not particularly prayer people. They have to pray. They're more chesed people. And some people are Yishuv Haaretz, and some people are Tzedakah, and some people are Tefillin people. Everyone's got to find their own very unique path. But Avraham, he got the ball rolling. He collects the zchut of all of them. And that's why we end up saying, Baruch Hashem, Magen Avraham. Avraham is the ultimate Haganah. There's no doubt about it. He was the greatest of all the Avot. So from Chesed of Avraham Avinu comes everything else. I will mention as a side point to this that the bracha of Avraham means that he now has the ability to give brachot, as do his descendants. It used to just be God who gave brachot up to this point, and there was a major shift. I don't think it was ever greater shift in world history, besides even this, maybe even greater than Har Sinai, which is Avraham Avinu is now given the ability, and to his descendants as well, to bestow brachot into other people. So when you get a bracha from Am Yisrael, Klal Yisrael, you yourself are blessed. It's as though God himself is giving you a bracha. And, lo aleinu, if you mess with the Jewish people, and you get a klala, you'll be cursed as well. It may not happen overnight. It may not happen in a few months. It may take a few years. Maybe it takes generations. But eventually, the bracha will filter down, and the klala, the curse, will filter down as well. Avraham is being told that his descendants are going to be protected by brachot, and if they give bracha, it's as though God gave it. And if you mess with the Jewish people and their mission, when I say, what does that mean? That means stop us from fulfilling our mission as spreading Torah and mitzvot through the entire world, you will receive a klala. On this note, I want to jump to one last piece, which I'll mention and I'll finish with today. Check out this amazing idea. There is a story in the parasha that no one understands. It's actually the weirdest story that never made too much sense. And as a kid, I just read through it and not make too much of it. And that is the battle of 4 kings fighting 5 kings. 4 kings and 5 kings. And we know that there were 5 kings who were subjugated by 4 kings. The 5 kingdoms, kings means the kingdoms, rebelled. The 4 kings were able to squish these 5 kings. Along the way, these 4 kings had kidnapped someone called Lot. And Avraham has to go and beat these 4 kings in order to rescue his kidnapped nephew, Lot. If you think that kidnapping Jewish people is a recent phenomena, make it a grave mistake. From the very beginnings of the Jewish people, the days of Avraham Avinu, when we just got started, they already start to kidnap us in order to get their will. Okay, so a few things over here. 4 kings, 5 kings. Let's start with Lot, because Lot was kidnapped. Lot was kidnapped by these kings. And Avraham makes it his mission to rescue his kidnapped nephew Lot. By the way, who was Lot? Why does Avraham even care about him? Well, Avraham adopted his nephew Lot. When his brother Haran was killed by Nimrod by being thrown into a fiery furnace. The same furnace that Avraham was thrown into for spreading godly consciousness and survived and walked out of this fiery furnace. Haran, his brother, was also given the opportunity to denounce God and not be thrown in. And he says, let me see what happens to Avraham Avinu. If Avraham walks out alive, I'm with Avraham. But if I die, I die. So after he sees Avraham get rescued, Lot is thrown into this fiery furnace and he dies. And so his son, Lot, is left an orphan and Avraham adopts him. I want to mention that Haran gets a very, very rough kind of commentary. When we were a kid, we say, Haran, he wasn't like Avraham Avinu. Avraham, he was a real tzaddik, so Hashem helped him survive this furnace. And obviously Haran was like, if he goes in and gets out, I'll go in and get out as well. And he dies. And we give him a bit of a bad rap. It's a big mistake. Haran was a very big tzaddik, and he was the first person in Jewish history, listen well, my friends, who died from Mesirat Nefesh. You see, it wasn't that he said, if Avram goes in and gets out, I'll go in and get out. He was like, I'm not at the same level of Avraham Avinu, and yet I have my chance to make a Kiddush Hashem. I know I'm not going to get out because I'm nowhere near my brother's level, and yet I'm still willing to go in. He died in Mesirat Nefesh, make no mistake. He went straight to Gan Eden, the highest place in Gan Eden. And I'll prove it to you, because from Haran came Lot. Now, Lot is a very interesting character. We'll leave him aside for just one moment. But you should know that the descendants of Lot, i.e. Haran, became Malchut. Who came from Lot? David HaMelech, which means Mashiach as well. Not too shabby. Knowing your direct descendant becomes, and not only that, people don't realize this, but Lot, also from his family, come all the Imaot. Sarah comes from Lot. Right? Sarah comes from Haran. And Rivka and Leah, and Rachel, they all come from Haran. They're all mishpacha, which means that the Mesirat Nefesh of Haran at that time didn't just poof, disappear. It went into every single Jewish woman. And Jewish women are famous for having emunah. The emunah peshuta of every single Jewish woman throughout history comes from Haran, who gave up his life with Mesirat Nefesh. The emunah that Jewish women have, the binah that they have, and the emunah, bitachon they have in Hashem, which definitely filters down to Sarah Emenu, because she's about to be tested tremendously. When she gets kidnapped, the strength that she has to withstand that nisan, that struggle, that challenge, that test, comes from Haran. So don't just quickly, Haran went in, he died, he's nothing. It's a big mistake. He was a tremendous tzaddik. Avraham realized this and therefore adopted Lot as his own child. Now, these 4 kings, you should know, weren't just 4 kings. The rabbis tell us that these 4, whenever you see the number 4 always represents the 4 corners of the earth. They represent north, east, south, and west. And whenever you see 4 corners of the earth, you think to yourself, mi'arba kanfot haaretz means the Jewish people who are spread out. So Avraham Avinu is being told that his descendants, and he's about to be told in a lot more detail, later on in the parasha, with a covenant between the parts, with the Brit Ben Betarim, that his descendants will be spread out to the 4 corners of the earth. And they'd be subjugated by 4 kingdoms. So the number 4 always represents the Jewish people on 4 corners of the earth. That's what the number 4 represents. And the fact that Jewish people would end up in those 4 corners and have 4 kingdoms who would subjugate him. Hello? Avraham Avinu is fighting 4 kings. These 4 kings actually represent the 4 malchiot, the 4 kingdoms that the Jewish people will be subjugated by. What are the 4 kingdoms the Jewish people subjugated throughout history? Avram's descendants. We have Bavel, the Babylonians. We have Madai and Paras, the Medians and the Persians. We have Greece, Yavan, and we have Rome, Edom. Those are the 4 kingdoms. These 4 kings actually represent them exactly. Amraphel Melech Shinar. Shinar is Bavel. That represents the Babylonians that came later on in the form of Nebuchadnezzar. Arioch Melech Elasa. Elasa, they say, is the father of Madai and Paras. Kadalomer Melech Elam. Elam is also where Greece came from. They came from Elam, and Tidal Melech Goyim. Goyim represents many nations. Because Edom wasn't one nation. Edom starts with Rome, ended up becoming the Christian world. Right? They took over. Rome did not fall. The Christians just took over. People think, the fall of the Roman Empire. Roman Empire did not fall. It just transferred and became the Christians and the other nations who've been subjugating us up to the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, and to the very, very modern day. So these 4 kings that Avraham went to fight against actually were a prerequisite and a precursor for the 4 nations that are going to subjugate us. When Avraham fights these 4 nations, he's actually fighting off and helping us or showing us that we can fight off and win against the 4 kingdoms who are going to subjugate us until the end of history. That's why Avraham, by the way, I always thought that Lot was kidnapped and swept up in the battle. They were you should make no mistake, they were targeting Lot. Why? Because they actually wanted to target Avraham, but they couldn't get Avraham. So they kidnapped Lot in order to entice Avraham to come, so they could kidnap him too. Don't think that Lot, it was a coincidence he was taken. They were targeting him because they knew he would be the carrot that would draw Avraham, and they could get Avraham Avinu and stop the Jewish people forming and stop Avraham in his mission. And it did work. They kidnapped Lot, and Avraham jumped in with his army, whether it was hundreds of people or just Eliezer, whoever it was, but it actually worked. What they didn't bank on was that Hashem was blessed. And we already said it. If you try to attack the Jewish people, you're going to be cursed. If you bless them, you'll be blessed. And so Avraham Avinu won that battle. And he took Lot and he rescued him. But he says, I don't want the spoils of war, which he was entitled in those days. Everyone got spoils of war. He says, no, I don't want spoils of war. You should know I don't want spoils, to show that this is a battle of a spiritual nature. Which is why when you fight Amalek, you're not allowed to take spoils of war. Other nations you could take spoils of war. But not Amalek, because that's a spiritual battle, and not this battle over here. So Avraham was saying, this is a spiritual battle. I don't want the riches and rewards that come from this battle at all. I'm here to rescue Lot, because I'm here to rescue Mashiach. And the Midrash asked the most amazing question. Where can you find Mashiach? You can find him in Sodom. Mashiach can be found in, where's King David found? In Sodom. Where's Mashiach therefore found? In Sodom. Because Avraham went and rescued Lot, who ended up living in Sodom. Why he was there is another question altogether, an interesting question, but we'll leave that aside. And so Avraham Avinu wasn't just rescuing Lot, he was rescuing Lot's descendants, the Imaot, and he was rescuing Mashiach. So when Avraham Avinu acted, he didn't just act on his own behalf or his own mishpacha, he was acting on behalf of all Jewish history, and that reflects us as well. When every time we do an act, every time we do a mitzvah, we think we're just affecting ourselves, maybe our family, maybe on a good day our entire community, but actually, you're affecting the entire Jewish people till Mashiach's arrival. That is what you learn from Avraham Avinu, and that is why he is the Magen, the Haganah of David, right? It's all Avraham Avinu, and he is the one, Magen Avraham, is the Haganah that we the Jewish people receive as well. Have a great successful day.